And are you refreshed? Good. Now what?
Wow. Okay. So I love your teachings. I have been following them for years. I have learned more. I still learn today. I'm still learning more. So the segment intending, I love that.
Can you feel a new understanding of it here?
I can. I guess my question that I have that I would love some clarity about is, you know how you have said in the past, if somebody calls you and you don't know who they are, or you don't know them, and they say,
someone calls you on the phone and says, hello, you don't know me.
Right.
I'm just calling to let you know I will never call you again.
Right.
And you say, all righty then.
Yes. So,
but.
Yes. So, I've had some experiences, and it's why I'm here, with my family, and I know that you've spoken about families, and I've even heard you kind of say, like, maybe stay away from them a little bit, or, don't go there.
Well, let them create their own reality while you create your own reality. But because they've been with you for a while, it's not easy to see yourself in your new segment differently than they have been seeing you in your old segments. So your resentment about family is mostly about them locking you in to who you have been and not allowing you to freely go to the new places you're wanting to be. And they don't mean to do it. They're just accustomed to reacting. And so what happens is they see you, they react to who they think you have been, which if you're not out ahead of it and in sync with your inner being, you're likely to find resonance with who they think you've been. So you be who they think you've been, and then you resent them because it feels like they're the reason that you keep being who you've been. But they're not the reason that you keep being who you've been. They are just reminders, because your inner being will always remind you of who you really are, but you've let what they've been thinking about you just be more dominant than your inner being. That's all. Because you've been looking for love in all the wrong places. You look to them for security and balance and reassurance. So you've trained them into looking at you, and then you resent that they hold you the way they see you. And it's really hard to get them to not see you the way they've been seeing you, because you're so mad at them for seeing you like they've been seeing you that you're being the way they see you. So you all should just run away.
And that kind of is what I've done.
Well, we didn't really mean that. So what are you going to do to stop the cycle of regurgitation and start a new cycle of being? How can the continuity of who you have been morph a little into who you really want to be and release a little who you have been? That's what deliberate creation is always all about. How can I become the new, still appreciate the platform from which I am bouncing?
Yes. I love your teachings because I don't see them a lot, because I think that they're on a different disc than I try to be. I try to be deliberate in keeping we call it keeping our energy high.
But there is something about not seeing them, deliberately not seeing them.
I don't know that I have deliberately said, like, I think you just need to have a nice life.
Well, we'll just be... So, what do you want from this conversation?
I want to feel better about it.
So what you have been saying isn't the way it really is. And what we were saying is the way it really is, in that just thinking about them, in other words, whether you see them or not, they're still active in your vibration and keeping you from being who you really want to be, or you would feel better if you were being who you really are. You see, we don't want you to divorce the past. We don't want you to cut yourself off from the past. We just want where you're going to be dominant. That's all. You're never going to stop the continuity from what has been to what is becoming. That continuity is always going to be there. We're just asking you to pay attention to which way you're looking. And so we're not asking you to say, never again. We just want where you're going to be just a little more dominant. Because if where you're going is a little more dominant, then you're feeling satisfied. And if you're feeling satisfied, then you've got no beef with them. But if you're not practiced at looking forward, and you are practiced at leaving them behind, which you're not doing when you look behind to see what you're leaving, then it's all about them instead of about where you're going. Can you feel that? Did that make sense to you?
I'm working on it a lot, and it's just that their proximity is actually very close.
This story just gets better and better.
I know. I mean, they live within a mile, all of them. And
all of them.
All of them. 4. So, yeah. One is one house away. So it's hard not to think about them. I know. They're not here now.
Are they here?
No.
The proximity of them is really not what this conversation is about. It is your mental proximity. And you see, here's the thing. We really want you to hear this. We don't want you not to think about them. We just want you to think about other things too. And we want you to think about them as the wonderful launching pad that they have been. And so when you think forward thoughts, the wonderful launching pad that they've been is part of those forward thinking thoughts. Earlier in our conversation together, we talked about what true compassion is. And compassion is what you feel when you are in sync with your inner being, who is acknowledging you and feeling only positive emotion. So if you are really in sync with your inner being, if you are looking at these family members in the way that your inner being is, you feel appreciation for all that they have given you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because who you now are, and even more important, the vortex that you are allowing to unfold in your experience, would not be what it is if it were not for their magnificent, important contribution to it. And so it's all about your perspective of it. It's not about anything they ever said, anything they ever did, anything they ever now say, or anything they ever now do. The way you feel and your relationship with your inner being is not about what they're doing. It's about the difference between what you're doing about them and what your inner being is doing about them. Did you hear that? We're not asking you to move away from them. We're asking you to acknowledge them the way your inner being does. And your inner being doesn't see them as rescuing you. Your inner being doesn't see them as important to you now. Your inner being sees them as the wonderful basis of so much that you are, and feels only love and appreciation for all that they have been and all that they are. But your inner being is only looking forward. And when you're doing anything than looking forward, then you're not in sync with your inner being. And when you're not in sync with your inner being, you're not compassionate. And so then you may be looking at them in an attitude that causes you separation from your inner being. When you don't feel good, it's not about the subject that you are focused upon when you don't feel good. It's not about that. It's that the subject that you're focused upon, your inner being is also focused upon it, but your inner being is focused upon the subject that you're focused upon with a different attitude than you are focused upon the subject that you are focused upon. So your inner being is adoring all that they have been and all that they are, and if you're doing something less than that, then you're crossways of your inner being and you're blaming them when it's only about your relationship with your inner being that we're having the conversation about, or the emotional response about. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does. I think where I've been messed up is that...
You haven't messed up.
Well, I just feel like where I was having a little conflict is that I love to think of it that way. I don't think... I wouldn't be on this boat. My children wouldn't be where they are. Like, everything that has happened in my past with all of that has been what led me here. And I'm very grateful that it all happened.
But?
It's reconciling it now. Is that okay just to feel that way?
We're not asking you to reconcile it. We're asking you to segment and tend. So on a day-to-day basis, since they're right there, are you saying you don't see them? You just deliberately ignore them?
Sort of.
You sneak around the neighborhood and come home when they're not looking?
They really, really don't like me. They don't.
Well, then they're crossways of their inner beings, because their inner beings really like you.
I know.
So is your job to do something so that they will like you, or is your job to just be who you are and let them work it out with their inner being?
That's what I think.
But here's the thing. You're telling us that they really, really don't like you. And if you were not having a reaction to that, like not liking them back, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. This conversation is not about how they feel about you. It's about how you feel about how they feel about you. And so if we can sort of sort out how your inner being feels about them, and you know how your inner being feels about them?
Loves them.
Yeah, but you know why your inner being loves them so much? Here's a really important clue coming. You know why your inner being loves them so much? Your inner being
loves everybody.
She says because your inner being loves everyone. Not the answer we were looking for. The reason your inner being loves is because your inner being focuses on the path of least resistance, where the love is easiest to find. You know where your inner being finds love about them? In their vortex. If your inner being looked at them like you do, your inner being wouldn't like them either. But your inner being's too wise for that. Your inner being knows that that's old news. Your inner being appreciates all that they've lived for what they've created, and your inner being looks forward. How's that setting in with you? Can you get that? Let's back up just a little bit and talk about creation. Creation that you are about and that your inner being is about, and that we can't separate your creation from your inner being's creation, because you and your inner being are all the same thing. In other words, you're all rooting for the same team, rooting for the expansion and joyous evolution of your being. And so it really is this simple. Humans, you want to complicate it so much. You want to explain why your inner being would love someone by pointing out the details of whether they're lovable or not, or by acknowledging that your inner being just has a greater capacity to love than you do. And none of that is the reason. Your inner being loves because your inner being appreciates all the contrast that is causing the now and what's beyond. Your inner being is just the best segment intender that you can ever imagine, because you came into this body and you knew what you didn't want and you knew what you did want. And every encounter you had with any of those people caused you to launch these rockets of desires. And then your inner being gave undivided attention to what you asked for and blessed the experience that you had with any of them for the new creation that was born out of it. So your inner being feels only love and appreciation for everything that was forward moving. And your inner being never looks back to contemplate why it happened or how it happened or if it should or shouldn't have happened. Your inner being only acknowledges the value of what happened. And it's only value looking, forward value looking, only doing that. That is the simple thing that we are asking of all of you here today. We're just asking you to stand where you are and not spend so much time explaining how you got here. Instead, revel in the vibrational reality that you've created and enjoy the motion forward toward that, like your inner being is. So then we give you statements about your inner being, such as the difference, the primary difference between you and your human form and you and your inner being form. Did you hear that? You and your human form, and you and your inner being form, is that your inner being never looks back. Your inner being doesn't look back to what was, which you called your past, like that time before when someone stole your wallet. Your inner being doesn't look back there. And your inner being doesn't look back to what you call now either, because what you call now is looking back to your inner being. Your inner being only looks to the vibrational reality that is you. And if you are ever doing anything less than that, then you are not having compassion in this moment. You are not in alignment with your inner being. So the way for you to have your greatest joy is by looking forward like your inner being is looking forward. And is there a simpler way of looking forward than just segment intending?